The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and the man seated next to me this week, he just loves the smell of glue. His name is Mike Roth.
Especially Elmer's. It doesn't make me all lightheaded.
Yeah? Like a wood glue?
Yeah. Is it all purpose or wood glue? Like a regular,
there's
the
different
white
ones. Just
paste.
the regular white stuff. You like that,
the
huh?
wood glue has a yellow tint.
Yeah.
Makes you feel like it's wood.
You rub that on your gums.
Yeah, I pretty much have a whole siding of the house done in wood glue because it's just so easy to work with.
I'm not sure you know a lot about construction of a house.
It sticks.
Let's just
It's
glue this board up here.
Yep, and just paste on some more glue.
I seem to remember a story about three little pigs. I think one of them used wood glue. It didn't work out too well for them.
What do they know?
What do they know? They're pigs. They're not builders.
Pigs don't build things.
Moron. Oh, man. So this week we have quite a show. We have the return of some movies into theaters. We have some streaming movies. And we finally wrap up our Summer of Keanu. It's been so fun, but this is where we draw an end to our Summer of Keanu. Mm-hmm. But first, I'm going to get us started with what we have on the marquee, and it is the first movie to return to theaters. And oh, what a return it is. A film that has been in turmoil and toiling away for the last 4 years, seemingly. Yeah. The New Mutants, written and directed by Josh Boone. This movie's had 5 different release dates, but we finally got it now.
I've seen posters for this years ago.
Yeah. By the way, that poster, none of that, the visual you see on the poster never appears in this movie. Maybe an original cut of it, but this movie bills itself as a haunted house movie with a bunch of hormonal teenagers. Stars Blue Hunt as a young girl named Danielle. It's 5 young mutants that are kind of just discovering their abilities. They're held in this secure facility that's run by a mysterious doctor. And all of these mutants are at different stages of understanding their abilities. Some seem to have been in this facility for a while, maybe years. Mm-hmm. And it's like an old asylum, basically. And Dr. Reyes, played by Alice Briggs, is like the Nurse Ratchet of the facility. And she's doing some tinkering on these kids and their psyches and their powers and such. And she talks about working for a superior who's watching them and constantly referring to her superiors. By the way, that never pays off. That never pays off. But Danielle, again played by Blue Hunt, is the new mutant who doesn't even know what her powers are. And she is brought in to this facility and she's facing the hazing of a bully, especially Ileana, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Okay. She's Ileana, and she's like the mean girl in this place and does all the hazing of the new girl. Danielle really connects, though, with Rain, played by Maisie Williams from Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And they kind of form a bond really quickly, and then strange things start to happen in this place. And soon, these new mutants have to try and harness their powers to fight back against things. And Danielle, interestingly, as the lead character, really muted her performance. She doesn't do a lot. It's a lot of her moping around. I don't know what my powers are. Oh man, This sucks. I don't know why I'm here. What's going on? It's kind of the entire performance from her. There's also a young man named Roberto who has the power of fire. Okay. He's kind of unexplained and underused. He's played by Henry Zaga. You also have the final mutant is a guy named Sam, played by Charlie Heaton, who was the older brother on Stranger Things.
I noticed that. And I also noticed you said Stranger Things happen. And
nice.
I was thinking,
I know what I'm doing.
Does he do it on purpose?
And Sam seems to have strong powers, but he's constantly injuring himself because he's trying to harness and figure out his powers. Okay. And his powers are kind of wonky, but he's really shy, really self-aware, an introverted teen, self-aware of himself. What's odd about this movie is it feels like you can feel that this movie has been re-edited and reshot, and you can feel like the choppiness of the story. And you can feel like it's missing things, and it's billed as a horror movie. I think there were just like little nods to horror in this movie. There wasn't enough real actual horror. You know from minute one that Dr. Reyes is the antagonist of this movie.
Yeah.
And so you're just watching it, waiting for this to kind of play off, and she's kind of one note. And there's not enough action for me. Like, there's a great final action scene that's awesome. But a lot of it's just them just kind of hanging out, learning about each other. I did enjoy the character of Rain. I thought she was really interesting. Ileana, Anya Taylor-Joy, I'll just watch her do anything. She's great.
Yeah.
She was great. Sam was fun. But it kind of lacked a cohesive idea to it.
I feel like this movie should have wrote itself. I mean, they have a clean slate. They're starting with new characters. And to have what they were billing as a true horror element to a superhero movie, I thought was fantastic. I was looking forward to this movie for so long.
Sure.
I did not see this movie, but I am more and more glad.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is so the final sequence is really cool. Ileana was an awesome character. Her powers were really cool. I liked every time she was doing something. What was most frustrating was this movie was trying to set up a universe that will never get paid off. Because there's not going to be a sequel to this. There's no way. And so that's the most frustrating thing is you watch a movie knowing, we're leaving it open, but I'm not going to get a payoff on that.
Yeah.
And so there's good effects. I think it was a good idea. I think that it was the result was a little middling, I liked about half the characters a lot. Half the characters I thought, you should do more with this.
Yeah.
So in the end, I gave it a weak 3 stars.
Okay.
It's fine. It's good enough. Part of it's the first thing I got to see on a big screen in a long 6 months. That kind of helped,
And you are in the September slump. I'm sure all the rules are gone now, but
right.
September is never good.
No. So anyways, New Mutants, there you go. What do you have for us, sir?
All together now.
All right. We doing this together?
Yes,
okay.
yes. No. Netflix has a movie called All Together now, directed by Brett Haley. Oh, wow. Louis
Carvalho.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. You're really good at these names. Plays Amber Appleton. She is the forever optimist. She's a young girl in high school. She's always helping people. She's working hard. She has many jobs. She even volunteers for community services. She does things for her school, like fundraisers and stuff, so the school can have tubas and stuff like that. She is one of those perfect kids, but this plays out very much like all the dog movies I do not like, because her whole life is just one tragedy after another tragedy. Not little ones like, oh, I dropped my ice cream cone, I was really hungry, but people die in her life. It starts off with her homeless. Her dad died somewhat recently, and the mom doesn't have enough money to get an apartment, so they're living in a school bus that the mother drives during the day.
Right.
She also suffers from alcoholism.
The mom does, yeah.
The mom does, and she is clean at the moment, but there's moments where she's like, I had one beer, or I had a glass of wine, and you could see that the fall is going to happen even further than it already is. She remains an optimist, but around the time where her mom decides she's going to stay with an abusive boyfriend, that is when Amber decides she needs to separate herself. She is surrounded by a lot of good friends because she is an awesome person, very happy and brings joy to people, inspires people. Her friend Ty, played by Renzi Felix, he is kind of a love interest, but you know that they're just best buddies, but they want more.
Right.
So you get to see that kind of awkward teen trying to tiptoe around the fact that we have a good friendship, but,
Sure.
We really would rather be kissing. And and also she spends a lot of time with the people that she ends up living with, which her friend is autistic, or she started this off as like a work thing. I'm not really sure what that relationship is, but there is a friendship. Chad, was the man with autism, played by Gerald Isaac Waters, and Donna is the mother of that, played by Judy Reyes.
Yeah.
And yep. She also has a friend in Carol Burnett.
Right, the great Carol Burnett.
Yep, who is in a senior citizen home. Seems very able-bodied, but very grumpy, and she's always trying to shine the light on that everything. And
I mean, they have a bond, but
They have a bond.
but her character basically just kind of criticizes Amber.
yeah, I would assume it has to be a paid job,
Yeah.
because that looked like a miserable time going over to Carol Burnett's house.
Sure.
I never thought I would say that. She's,
Yeah, right.
She's always funny, but tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, she loses her optimism. And what can be done for
Well,
this to?
and not only that, but she also has an opportunity because she's a musician,
Mm-hmm.
a drama club geek, and her teacher Fred Armisen is another one she bonds with, and she has a chance to audition for Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get my life going. And then her dog, who she loves so much, suddenly comes down with something and needs a surgery, and that basically is going to take all the money that she had saved up to leave, and so I'm going to just put my future on hold because I need to take care of this dog.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of person she is.
And we didn't mention all the tragedies, but honest, there's a
there's
lot
of
of
them.
tragedies in this, pretty much all the way up to the end. And it's expected. It has to be a turnaround, just like a lot of those dog movies where you just see tragedy after tragedy after
Sure.
tragedy. And really,
How
by
much
the
can
end
I
of the
take?
movie, all they have to do is say, "Ooh, I found something shiny," and you're like, "Finally."
Yeah.
Your life is going better, and you smile and blah blah blah, and it plays that formula really well, because this is a very depressing movie. And any shine.
No, I
at
do
the
think
end,
though. I think there is a lot of depression, but I think that her performance as Amber it's heartbreaking. And I don't think it's because they like purposely pull at your heartstrings necessarily, but I think it's because I saw like the sweetness of youth and the innocence of youth and looking ahead at your future, and then the pain of adulthood reflecting back on that.
Yeah.
And I think that reflection of her life was really hard, because I think the movie exemplified like the best in people, in her and the people she dealt with, and how what she put out into the world would come back to her, right?
Yeah.
That if you're good, and if you allow others who are good to give you the gift of giving, it's a great thing. And it doesn't always have to be beaten down if you're a good person. And I think that's the best thing about Brett Haley as a director, is that he is so good at addressing real emotions in all ages. Like his first few films, he had films with Blythe Danner, and he was addressing like that age and how you don't have to just accept just being an old fogey. You there's a life out there. It's Sam Elliott with The Hero, same thing. And then a couple years ago, Hearts Beat Loud, it was Nick Offerman and Kiersey Clemens and this father-daughter relationship and how that interplayed and it felt real. And I thought that's like what this did too. Is I think it's depressing, but I saw it as like a story of hope.
I didn't feel the hope until pretty much the third act. You keep on watching, despite all the bad things that are happening to this young woman, and her life is busy. She has many things on her plate, and she's trying to save money, not for her education, but so her mom could get an apartment.
Right.
It just was so depressing.
It's heartbreaking.
It was dark. It was very dark. It was nice to see her smile through the whole thing,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it was like, man, whose life is this unlucky?
Just when it rains, it pours, man.
Oh, yeah.
The hammer keeps coming down. It's not always great. What would you give altogether now?
I gave it a 3. I did enjoy the movie at the end, but wow, it was dark up until that point.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm a sucker for Brett Haley. I think he's a really interesting director, and I don't think this is one of his best, but I was interested by it, and I ended up giving it a 3.5 stars.
All right.
So, yeah, worth checking out. The next movie we have on the marquee is the movie that had been circled on calendars as being the big blockbuster of the summer, and we got an early screening. It is Tenet, written and directed by Christopher Nolan. Stars John David Washington as the protagonist. That's just his character's name. He's the protagonist. I'm just going to say there's a character early in the movie that describes the experience of this film at points. They say, don't try to understand it, feel it. And that's how I felt about this movie. And I'm going to dance around this because this movie doesn't really open big until after we're recording this.
Yeah.
So I don't give a whole lot of spoilers away. But it has to do with time travel. And another quote early on is in the movie is one of the characters says, "You've got a great future in your past." These things help you kind of set the mood of like, there's a lot of confusion in this movie. And it feels like a culmination of all of Christopher Nolan's previous ideas. Like, you like Memento's use of reverse storytelling? Oh, hold on. Because we're going to really mess with time in this movie. The protagonist is sent on a mission with only one word to go by, Tenet. He knows this, and that's the word he has to go by. And there's a lot of confusion in this movie, especially early on. Like the first 45 minutes, I was very confused by what was happening because you're thrown right into it. He finds there's a world of inverse weapons, bullets that can travel back in time from an unknown future and do some damage. Somebody shot a gun 20 years ago, you pick up that gun, the bullet can come back in time and kill us. It's wild, right? So he's trying to track down and stop these inverse weapons, among other things. But that's only the beginning or the end of things in the way this movie plays out. And that's when it starts to get really wild is past, present, and future are all operating at the same time in this weird world. He gets partnered up with this mysterious partner played by Robert Pattinson, who kind of helps guide him through this world. He also meets this lady who can help him kind of navigate because she's married to the bad guy, a lady named Kat, played by Elizabeth Debicki, who is married to this evil arms dealer who's kind of in control of everything, named Sador, played by Kenneth Branagh. And it's weird because there's foreshadowing to things in this movie that have already happened. There's so much going on, and you can really start to kind of feel the brilliance of Nolan, and it makes for interesting action in this movie when things start happening in reverse and you see the same scene shown from different ways throughout the movie, and you start to piece things together. But a lot like Inception, there's different rules for the inverse world. Inception had different rules for different levels of the dream world.
Yeah.
There's different rules in the inverse world, and they're kind of crazy. And a lot of filmmakers have hallmarks. Tarantino has hallmarks. A lot of filmmakers you see, they have hallmarks of you turn it on, you go, I know who this is. This is a so-and-so movie. And Christopher Nolan's no different. He's got a ton of them, whether it's visual components or narrative components, and he's using all his tricks in this movie. There's a huge opening sequence in this movie that reminded me so much of that opening plane sequence in Dark Knight Rises.
Okay.
Where you first meet Bane. It's just crazy action to open the movie.
Yeah.
This movie opens similar to that. You've also got, much like that movie and like Dunkirk, there's a lot of muffled and sometimes unintelligible dialogue because people are wearing masks in a good chunk of the movie, and the people I was with and people I've spoken to since all say I had a really hard time understanding some of that dialogue.
Okay.
Which doesn't help when you're trying to figure out what's going on and you don't even know what they're saying. Michael Caine shows up in this movie. He's been in every Christopher Nolan, right? He's a staple, right?
Yeah.
And he shows up. He does an exposition dump, basically just tells the protagonist a bunch of stuff to kind of send him on his way. And it was a beautiful, loving little moment where the protagonist gets up, he walks away, he turns around, and he says, "Goodbye, Sir Michael." And he walks away, and I was like,
"Oh, wow."
That's so sweet. It's so meta, it's just Michael Caine sitting there doing his thing. But there's also, much like all Nolan movies, there's this loud, omnipresent soundtrack going on. And if you listen closely in parts, the soundtrack plays in reverse when they're in the inverse world. It's things are going on backwards. And it's really interesting. There's exotic locales like all his movies. And
so when things are going backwards, is it actually visually going backwards?
Yes, visually. The dialogue is backwards at some points.
Okay.
Things are backwards.
Does it make sense? Or
Not
is
always.
it just setting up a mood?
Not always. And I felt like I'd been spun around a couple of times in a couple moments of this movie. But John David Washington's awesome in this. Robert Pattinson's great. Kenneth Branagh's great. They're truly great. And this is... my review is kind of a cop-out in a way because this is a movie that is demands a rewatch.
Okay.
Preferably with subtitles for me, so I can understand everything that was being said.
Okay.
But there's so much thrown at you, and everything pays off, whether it's throwaway lines from the beginning or visuals that you saw and you didn't think about it, and it pays off later, that I feel like knowing what I know now, I need to go back and rewatch. And I think I'm positive things are going to piece together on the second time, just knowing what I know from the end of the movie. and it's just I don't know. It's one of those movies like I need there's some connective tissue in the storytelling that I was missing in this dialogue dump that I didn't quite get. It was a tizzy. Myself and all my friends that were there, the movie got done, I turned around and I said, you guys all understood everything that was going on. They're like, nope, none of us did. There's a lot thrown at you. So, so my score right now is, I give it a 3.5 stars, but it's got an asterisk next to it because I have no doubt that it'll bump up on a rewatch and kind of understanding more.
I'm glad you enjoyed it the first run. Even after you're done, you still felt like it was completed. And
it's a really good, really interesting movie. I just want to understand. There's pieces to it that I need to put back, figure out where they go in the puzzle, because they've just been in my head ever since I got out of there. So I need to go back. But it's definitely bare minimum 3.5 stars at this point. So
there we go.
You go. The last movie we have for the week, sir. What do you have?
This is a big movie. It's been waiting for a long time to be made. It's Bill and Ted's Face the Music. We meet the original Bill and Ted from back in the 90s, pretty much trying to fulfill the prophecy that they were told they were going to have to achieve. If you're not familiar with the other Bill and Ted movies, it's a couple of young...
Hey, go rewatch our previous episodes.
Yeah, go rewatch our previous episodes. Ted is played by Keanu Reeves. Bill is played by Alex Winters. They're in the previous movies, they're young people, and they're told by the people in the future that they are going to kind of unite the whole world through this one epic song. The first movie, they had to get through high school. The second movie, they had to get to the Battle of the Bands. And ever since the Battle of the Bands, they have been desperately trying to find this one song, and it's not working. You see them at a wedding, and they're trying one of their experimental songs, and you can tell for decades they have tried all these musical instruments and inspirations and stuff to get one piece of music that the whole world would say, yeah, that is song, but they're not getting it. People from the future, they come back and they're like, guys, you haven't made this song. You're getting
Clock's
pretty
ticking,
old.
guys.
If you don't figure it out by tomorrow at 7 p.m., all space and time is just going to turn into mush.
Right.
And you have to figure this one out, guys. So Bill and Ted, they're the same kind of guys as they were back in...
Very much so, yeah.
They're not that bright, but they're very enthusiastic and they have ideas. So they decide they're just going to go into the future and find the song so they can play it back in the present and save all space-time.
Pretty basic.
There's a side story on top of it. Bill and Ted, they have 2 daughters. One is Thea, played by Samara Weaving, and Billy, played by Bridget Lundy
Payne.
Lady Payne, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And they are named after their fathers in reverse order. Yeah. And they are doing pretty much what the first, the second movie did, and that's go back in the past and find all these people to make the best band to play the song that's going to unite everybody. I like their story where they just go back to Jimi Hendrix and they find out, well, we can't get Jimi Hendrix, so we're going to get what inspired him. And they just kept going back
further
in time to like the original person that inspired this whole band. I thought that was a good idea. They revisit Death, played by William Sadler, who goes through the whole story that you see like the snippet of at the end of Bogus Journey, where he gets kicked out of the band, and he's a little bitter about it.
You guys didn't want me.
And so they revisit him to get back into the band. There's also some marital problems between the princesses, which aren't the original princesses, but neither were the last princesses. So that's not really a point. And Bill and Ted just keep on running into their future selves over and over and over again. And the future does not look good.
Yeah, if you're coming here because you want a lot of different Bill and Teds, you're going to get your money's worth.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of different Bill and Teds.
For the most part, I did enjoy this film, but it's mostly because it is revisiting all the Bill and Ted movies.
I think that's the thing with this. Like, I think the daughters were fun. I liked them. Keanu, in this movie, he looked old to me.
Yeah.
Part of it was he looked like an old guy trying to play a teenager.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Same thing with Alex Winter.
Yeah,
too.
he was too, but Keanu really stood out. Part of it is just because I'm used to seeing him with the beard now.
Yeah,
And
he shaved it off for this
Yeah, it
movie.
looked rough. I did like there was the Seventh Seal homage when they're playing the game against the Reaper. Like, oh, it's kind of fun. I like that. There's some fun moments in here. It's a slightly less confusing time travel movie than Tenet was.
Oh, I bet.
But you know what? If I'm being honest, this series, I think I really only really enjoy the first one.
Yeah.
Like, I'm good. One and done, I'm kind of good with these movies.
There's little snippets that make me like the movie. Like in Bogus Journey, I really liked Death.
Sure.
I thought he was fantastic. In this one,
Yeah.
I can't really pinpoint anything that I'm like, yeah, this sets it apart from everything else. The daughters were fine, but the band members were just uninspiring. The shtick of them keep on running into their future selves, and every time they run into themselves, it's a worse situation. I thought that was kind of funny, but nothing really sets us apart as it's a must-see.
Exactly. What would you give Bill and Ted Face the Music?
I gave it a 3.
Yeah, so did I. I gave it 3 stars as well. Real quickly, though, as we end our Summer of Keanu, we hung out with Keanu all summer. We saw several moments in his career outside of his big hits, The Matrix and all those things. Did you come out of this with a different opinion of Keanu? Is he overrated, underrated? What do you think?
As an actor, I don't think he is fantastic. He's got a lot of misses, but as a person, I think he is fantastic. He is humble. He still keeps in contact with what made him the star he is. He's known for doing things like when he did Devil's Apprentice. It was going to cost way too much with Al Pacino's salary. So he said, you know what? Take some of my salary so we could get Al Pacino.
I think he's a genuinely nice guy.
He's a super nice guy.
I think that what I've discovered this year is that he has a niche that he fits in. I don't think he's a really good actor. I think he has a niche, and when he finds those films, he's really good in them, but I think he's limited. I enjoy him in a lot of these movies and his action movies, but I think he's limited as much as I enjoy him.
I think as a person, he is inspiring.
Yeah.
He's very inspiring.
I like how he's very self-aware too. Like, he's very self-aware of who he is. He's willing to make fun of himself and previous characters, and I like that.
He really does dedicate himself to the craft, like all his moves and stuff. It's his moves.
He's got moves.
And he's not around like Tom Cruise where he's bragging about how awesome he is. He's just doing his job and loving it. And I think as a person, man, he is a gem. He really is a gem.
Mike likes Keanu.
I like Keanu a lot.
All right, let's move ahead, sir. What is coming soon, the weekend of September 11th? We have a few movies that'll be streaming. First one is The Broken Hearts Gallery. It's a rom-com about a broken-hearted young woman who finds a way to cope with being broken-hearted.
Is it a gallery?
I don't know. It's in a gallery, yes. We also have The Babysitter, Killer Queen. It's a sequel to the Samara Weaving comedy horror flick from a couple years ago. This time, the kid who survived the horror is faced with more demons. I enjoyed the first Babysitter, so I'm kind of looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Unpregnant, a dramatic comedy of a 17-year-old Haley Lou Richardson who finds out she's pregnant. And we also have Coastal Elite, J. Roach comedy about characters in a quarantine making dramatic confessions. So those are your streaming movies. It's going to be a different week. Also, I guess we'll talk about it in a second. Before we end this show, which we are nearing the end of, we want to thank our sponsor, Marcus Theaters, The Palace here in Sun Prairie. We are glad you're open, and thank you for sponsoring this program. It was so good to sit in a wonderful Dream Lounger this week. Next week, sir, Mulan is coming out on Disney Plus. If you want to drop $30 for it. Otherwise, they just announced if you wait until December 4th, it will be free on Disney Plus. So act accordingly, however that affects you.
I'm surprised they announced that.
I'm surprised they did too. We also have a couple of streaming films, Love Guaranteed and I'm Thinking of Ending Things, as well as a throwback. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, we don't know.
Stay tuned if you want to find out what that is. You can also, join us on Facebook and Instagram to keep in touch with us at Real Reviews TV on both of those platforms. We'll get you in touch with Mike and I. But until next week, when we're talking about all kinds of fun things, I'm Jamison.
I'm Mike Roth.
Thanks for watching.